Good morning, this is Kris Shoemaker, also known as Yehudah ben Shomeyr, and you're listening to Coffee with Kris, the time of the day where we share a cup of coffee and share a bit of the Word of God. This is Thursday, our fifth Sidra, our fifth Aliyah in Tetze, which means when you go out. And today, we are in Deuteronomy chapter 23, and we're going to be covering verses 25 and 26, which reads, "When you come into your neighbor's vineyard, you may eat your fill of grapes, but do not put any in your basket. When you come to your neighbor's standing grain, you may pluck the ears with your hand, but you are not to swing a sickle on your neighbor's standing grain." This is basically saying that anybody that owns a vineyard or a field, that if anybody is passing by, walking by, and they get the munchies, that it's okay to take a few grapes. It's okay to pick an apple. It's okay to take a handful of grain, rub it in your hand to get the husks off, and pop the grain in your mouth and eat it. It's totally fine to do that, but it is not fine to collect and save some for later, to put things in a pouch, in a basket, or to harvest it in some way. And that's the major prohibition here. Now, this reminds me of a passage, a very controversial passage, which many attribute to Yeshua breaking Torah. Now, Yeshua could not be our sinless Messiah if he broke God's laws. So he's not breaking God's laws here. So whose laws is he breaking? So it says in Matthew chapter 12, verses 1 through 8, it says, "At that time, Yeshua went through the grain fields on the Sabbath." Oh, what's he doing in a grain field on the Sabbath? Well, he's walking back from synagogue with his disciples. His disciples became hungry and began to pluck the heads of grain and eat them. They're working on the Sabbath. No, they're not. They don't have a sickle in their hand. They don't have a basket in their hand. That says that they're plucking the heads of the grain and eating them. We just read in Deuteronomy chapter 23 that this is not work, that this is gleaning. It's not harvesting. It's just to satisfy an immediate temporal hunger. So it says, "But when the Pharisees saw this, they got their feathers ruffled. They said to them, 'Look, your disciples are doing what is not permitted on the Sabbath.'" Yeah, show me chapter and verse, Mr. Pharisee. Those are your rules, not God's rules. And in verse 3 it says, "But he, Yeshua, said to them, haven't you read that when David, when he became hungry, and those with him, how he entered the house of God and ate the showbread, which was not permitted for him to eat, nor those with him, but only for the priest? Or haven't you read in the Torah that on the Sabbath, the priest in the temple break the Sabbath and yet are innocent?" How do priests break the Sabbath? They're working. That's their job. They work on the Sabbath, which means life or death jobs are permitted. If you are a firefighter, a police officer, a nurse, in the army, these are life and death jobs. These keep people safe. Crime and war doesn't cease, and injuries do not stop just because it's a Sabbath day. So these are life or death jobs, which is okay to do. And it says, verse 6, "But I tell you that something greater than the temple is here." Which he's talking about himself, because Yeshua is the living manifestation of the Word and the things that are in the Word. "If you have known what this means, 'I desire mercy and not sacrifice,' you wouldn't have condemned the innocent. For the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath." So hopefully I was able to explain things sufficiently to show you that that Yeshua and his disciples were not breaking the laws of the Sabbath, but what they did was totally permitted in Deuteronomy chapter 3, verses 25 and 26. But it went against the Pharisaical edicts and traditions, which sometimes they put above the Word of God itself. We just read not too long ago in another devotional that we did that the Pharisees would put their laws above God's laws. So basically, when a child was responsible to take care of his elderly parents, but instead of giving the money to help aid and assist his elderly parents who could no longer work, but instead saying, "I've dedicated this to God and I give it to the temple," they break the commandment of not honoring their father and their mother, but at the same time, they're keeping the rabbinical edict of dedicating something to God. Which is the greater commandment here? God doesn't need your money. Your parents need your money. The greater commandment was what God said, not what the rabbinic edict dictates. So let's keep this in mind. Tradition is great as long as it draws us closer to God, and tradition is great as long as it backs up or coincides with the Word of God. But when it deviates from the Word of God, we should cut those traditions off like a cancer. They're not good for us. So guys, thanks so much for listening. Go out there and have a great day. Shalom and God bless.